and welcome to Devil's Advocate. And again, I must get it right because I do appear other places and I have got it wrong in the past. But today I'm Devil's Advocate. I bagged the hosting gig. I'm not quite sure why, but I have. Anyway, I've got a top panel of guests. I've got Jamie to my right or to my left, whichever way you're looking at me. I've got Reece and I've got Julio. I've never worked with Julio before, so welcome, Julio. Quick introduction from yourselves, lads. How are we feeling from last night, and then we'll get into it. Really, we'll deep dive into last night's game. Look at the practical side of it. Look at where we all felt we didn't play particularly well, or did we play particularly well, and what we're expecting for the weekend. And we'll bring in a few bits and pieces about Weghorst, about De Gea and his upcoming contracts, the impact that Wan-Bissaka's having, and our good old friend Rashford getting Player of the Month. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't the boss get Manager of the Month as well? So anyway, Jamie, how are you, my friend? Good to have you back, mate.
Yeah, good to be back. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it was a good game last night. I bought a pie before we went in, and I kept it in my pocket for the first 20 minutes because I was absolutely brass. And the result was worth it in the end. You know what I mean? But it was one of those that it was a typical Europa League night. You know, we came up against stubborn opposition. Betis, I'm pretty sure as well, have just held the El Barcelona to a draw earlier in the week as well. You know, so they're showing that they're not a pushover side. And I think that all in all, the end result was a good response to last Sunday. You know, the less said about that, the better, though. And look, I think we were back to firing on all cylinders. I know we're going to touch on individual players and stuff throughout the show, but Weghorst again showing his importance. I was just absolutely buzzing for him when he scored that. Everyone around me was as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know there's a lot of talk on Twitter about how, he's useless and stuff like that, but the people around the ground and stuff like that, you could feel how relieved everyone was when it finally hit the back of the net for him, because he's had a bit of a bad run. And yeah, it's one of those, you're nervous to say job done because you never know what these Europa League fixtures can throw at you. But you go to Seville now confident that we can get a result over there with maybe a rotated squad, give the players a bit of a break, because I think there's some of them that's still looking a bit fatigued. Casemiro looked a little bit off the pace last night in some places. But these players are playing week in, week out. We're playing every 3-4 days, and it's the same side. But yeah, I think it was a professional performance. The Betis fans, a handful of them embarrassed themselves towards the end. And it was one of those that, to be fair, the last 5 minutes of the game, I was watching them more than I was watching what was happening on the pitch. As soon as the police arrived, you see digs getting thrown left, right, and centre, and all out. Something tasty going on there. But yeah, you know what? It was as far as Thursday nights go, it was cold, but it was a good, professional, solid performance. And it was nice to see Bruno in amongst the goals after all the nonsense we've seen about him in the press. Rashford is just doing Rashford things. You know what I mean? And Anthony as well. It was a stunning goal. So yeah, good vibes all around.
Good. Reece, good to have you, mate. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thanks. I'm not too bad.
Good, lads. You know me with my questions and the way I view football and the way I look at football. I think Jamie was right. I think the first half, the Betis played what I would call and class as an intelligent game of football against.
Easily.
And I've had this debate with a few people, and people were saying, "What do you mean by intelligent football?" They pressed us at the right times, at the right areas of the pitch. Their passing was short and crisp. Their short game was excellent at times. Their long game was very, very good at times. Mm-hmm. What was your overall thoughts about the way that Betis played? And I want to ask you this question because I think it's an important question. At 3-1, were you of the mind, do we stick or twist? It's quite an interesting question. And see what you think.
I actually thought for most parts of the game, Betis were actually the better side. For most parts of the game, actually, I thought the stats and the numerical side. And this is what I love. This is what I love on here about stats. Is the numerical side of it is United on a stats perspective completely dominated the game, but from an eye line perspective, Betis actually had more overall control. The only difference is though is the clinical side of both teams. We were very clinical in chances we had. Betis in the first 20-25 minutes should have had 2 or 3 goals. That's that level of difference. That's that control where you really have to take your chance. If you don't, you are going to get punished for it. And less than said from Sunday is another example. Betis got exactly what we did, only they didn't get 7 goals put past them, which is the painful reality. I also agree with you in terms of the intelligent game. Like, I think we were very inhibited to actually initiate the press until maybe Betis were about 35 yards away from their box. We should have been pressing them 20 yards from the box. We should have been more attack from the front right at it. We weren't. We were quite hesitant at times. But eventually we started to pick things up, and that did improve, and that really reflected by the result. But overall, I do agree for a vast majority of it. I think Betis were very intelligent in the game. There were moments of the game where quite questionable about who should have started that game and who shouldn't. But
yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit.
I also think as well, and I say this because of the result and 3-1 stick or twist. I think we should have twisted a few things. Personally, I think some changes should have been made. But I also think Casemiro should have got greedy. I think Casemiro should have got booked. I don't think we need Casemiro for the second leg. I would rather he have actually a full week where he's recovered, and then we use him for the league, and then he's actually back for the quarterfinals. So that yellow, because obviously that yellow card will, if he doesn't get booked next week, that yellow card will continue the quarterfinals for the first leg, and who knows, we could end up against a Roma. We could play Arsenal. We could play Juventus.
We can get Arsenal, can't we?
Yeah, we can. I would rather have Casemiro no cards. I know for a lot of people are like, oh, Casemiro booking, but he gets booked every week. Yeah, but it gives us that chance where he's actually going to be focused for those 2 legs. I actually would have preferred it, but it doesn't matter. He didn't get booked anyway, although I think there was one challenge where he might have been lucky to not get fouled. But I agree with Jamie as well about the Betis fans. I heard they were throwing shit as well. Like, doesn't surprise me. Like, Betis fans are not normally known for that from what I've seen. They're generally a well-respected fan base, so I'm quite surprised, really. I did actually watch their game. I did actually watch their first game the weekend when they drew 0-0 at Real Madrid. They played really well. They played really well against Real Madrid. The fact that they kept them quiet is very unhanded. The thing is, so I don't pay attention to the XG stats. I think it's all a load of bollocks, personally. I think it's a load of bollocks for me. But I'm just saying, based on what I watched, like, we were the more clinical team and we had our spells of dominance where we reflected on that. But times as well where they had the ball and they were actually passing the ball around us quite easily. But either way, I'm not bothered. The scoreline finished 4-1 to United and we move on to the second leg. I'll take it at the end of the day. So that's where I'm at.
Nice one. Julio, great to have you on board, mate. Thanks very much for joining us. Obviously, I don't know your thoughts on football. These guys know mine quite well, the way I view football and the way I view tactics, etc. My question to you is really, first and foremost, how impressed were you with Betis? And the reason I asked Reece about do you stick or twist at 3-1, what would your thoughts have been if Betis have maybe walked away from Old Trafford as 3-2 losers rather than 4-1 losers? We appreciate that wasn't the case, but the question with regards to tick or twist is sometimes in football, you overplay and then sometimes you get a sucker punch. So what's your overall thoughts about Betis? And would you have been worried if Betis had walked away from Old Trafford 3-2 behind?
Firstly, thanks for having me on. It's nice to be on with the 3 of you. In regards to Betis, they came to Old Trafford and I wasn't surprised by the way they played. And I think we saw the way their fans were at the end. And I do worry that going into the away leg, it's going to be almost like a cauldron there. And then if they came away with Old Trafford with a narrower deficit, it would have almost been like they're still in the tie. They're not completely out of it. I mean, what Jamie said earlier about, you're hesitant to say job done, that's it, end of, because, football is football, things happen. But I feel like United could go into the second leg with a little bit more ease about it, because I was worried that it was going to be, the scoreline would have been much narrower because of, obviously, the players might have gone into this game with maybe a little less confidence given, obviously, the events of Sunday. And just see United come away with a 4-1 win is promising. But Betis coming to Old Trafford and, playing the way they did and sending some nerves to the fans almost at 1-1 when they got that equaliser, and then they had that chance right at the end of the first half where it hit the post, and obviously getting the second and third goals settled the nerves a little bit, and the fourth one almost made everyone feel a bit easier. So I think United still need to be on the ball going into next week. I think it'll be more of a mentality game next week rather than who plays better. But I still think it gives them a little bit of ease, a little bit more control than if it was at 3-2.
Yeah, I think those are fair comments. Jamie, with regards to their goal then, I felt it was a wonderfully taken strike. He couldn't place it any better. He had no other way he could, done it with the outside of his foot. But what do you think of the overall play on that one? I thought we were left a little bit wanting. Varane and Martinez, I thought, played particularly well, but on this particular occasion, we were too square, in my opinion, and I think that's what gave. And Luke's always way too tucked in as well. I think that's what gave Perez the space. I was just wondering what your overall thoughts about their build-up play to the goal and the actual execution.
Well, I mean, if we ignore the blatant handball that was in the build-up, then they've worked it really well. And I think that's one of the patterns that we see people exploit against us quite often successfully, that they'll overload one side, and some of the naivety that we have, we're still adjusting. We're still 7 months into a project. You know what I mean? We're not going to be perfect, but you find that we often react to them overloading sort of the left-hand side like they did. And all of a sudden you've got Jose Perez on the opposite wing. And as soon as I saw him in the lineup, my first thought was, when did he go to Betis? And my second thought was, he's going to score tonight. Of course he is. And then he scored, and I was just like, shocker. But I think, we were naive and we got sucker punched. We can sit here and argue about the handball, dodgy refereeing decisions against Spanish opposition once again. You've got things of, if Martinez's handball against Sociedad is a handball, then how is that one not? But it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But it's one of those things that when you start to, if you were to paint a picture of the goals we've conceded throughout the season, I think a lot of them come through similar patterns of the play coming down one of our sides, everyone overloading and getting a little bit too carried away and excited, and then all of a sudden there's a switch out to the opposite side and we don't have anyone there quick enough, and we were caught napping. It was probably the only mistake that up until that point that we had made. I think we'd looked organised, we'd looked strong, and all of a sudden you've gone from Rashford smashing one in over Bravo's head 6 minutes in, you feeling, we're going to come away 5-6-0 here, to we're in for a bit of a tricky one here. And it was, for me, as soon as that went in, I said to my mate that I was with, I was just like, this is now a big test of character of, can they bounce back again from being rattled, or are we now going to go and be up against it? But one thing that Ten Hag has done is that he gets the team to bounce back from setbacks. We've had some big setbacks this season. Early doors, the 4-0, City 6-3, and obviously last Sunday, I'm begrudged to even say the scoreline. We all know what happened. We'll all pretend it didn't happen because we've bounced back. It's been a nice few days, to recover the Betis result. Obviously, the manager of the month, player of the month, De Gea getting save of the month. It's one of those things. But I think it exposes some of the flaws in our system. It exposes some of the naivety and the lack of positional awareness that we do suffer from occasionally. But we did well to ride it out, and I think we corrected it. They didn't really. Again, obviously, they had that other big chance where De Gea once again, he creates those issues for himself. And I don't even know which Betis player it was, but he started celebrating before it even gone in. And if he'd have actually tracked the ball and ran in, he'd have finished it off. But you see him, he puts his hands up to celebrate, notices it bounce off the post, and before you know it, I think it's Licha gets in and clears it off the line. So I think the defensive frailties were there for that sort of 20-minute period to be seen, but I think we shored up, pardon the pun, and we did look the more dominant and more threatening side. So it's one of those. My fear is that's clearly becoming a way for people to expose us. Whether or not it's running down there, attacking right hand side and switching to the left, or vice versa. But, and I know we're going to talk about him a little bit later on, it stopped when Wan-Bissaka came on.
Most definitely, yeah, most definitely, yeah. We'll touch on that. No, actually, what you've just explained so eloquently there, Jamie, is why I asked you that question, because that's exactly how I saw it. I was like very concerned about how square we were and how tight our line was. Sometimes when you're playing centre half, sometimes when you're playing fullback, if your fullback's tuck in and you don't have your wide men to kind of compensate for your fullbacks tucking in. Like Luke Shaw likes to play more tucked in than he does out wide. That's why he has positional issues. We'll talk about Dalot, Wan-Bissaka. When you look at the way that Wan-Bissaka plays as opposed to Dalot has positional issues, etc., etc. But it's the first time in a long, long time that Martinez and Varane were static. They were almost like stood by statues, and that enabled. And I can't remember who it was that that chested the ball down. He chested it really low, if you remember. He had to kind of like...
it was Wanmi.
That's it. Didn't he go missing second half? We'll talk about that. I'm sure he did. But but the ball after that, the ball was a very straightforward pass right across the 18-yard box. For Perez to strike it. So really interesting, because I totally agree with you, Jamie. That's exactly how I saw it. Reece, I want to come to you about a player of the month, Rashford, because I want to talk to you about the complexity of his goal. Most people were, I thought it was a very, very smart finish. Now, if you look at the way that he took the ball, look at the way the defender was coming in, Rashford from 18 months ago would have just hit it low, and the ball would have been blocked and away we went. What did you think of his mentality to actually slightly move the ball to the right before powering above Bravo? Because he didn't have enough time, in my opinion, to get it low at all. He could only go one way. I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on that one. Julio, you could probably give us your thoughts on that as well. But
to be honest, I think surprised is probably a more honest way to say it. I was very surprised. I didn't expect him to go for it. I thought, like yourself, I thought he would resort to type, and not in a way where I'm saying resort to type where he just causes a problem, because resort to type isn't always a bad thing. You can resort to type and be effective, but he didn't. He changed things up and he went for it and buried it really well. I actually thought for most part of the game, I actually thought Claudio Bravo was actually even though it was a goal, even though he conceded 4 goals, he was actually a very good game against us. He was really causing us problems, especially when we were trying to play the ball into the final third. He was always there to at least stop play. So the fact that in that circumstance where he is down low, where he's in his 40s now, or that sense where you are going to beat the man quite easily in the air, he still has good reach and he still has good reflexes. So you have to be wary of that as well as a top goalkeeper. But I like the fact that he changed things up, and maybe that helped a little bit. There was a little deflection there, like a slight one. It was very slim off Pizzala's knee, but it still gave that extra speed that needed to at least get over Bravo. He was never getting a touch to it, but I did like the fact that he changed things around rather than cutting in and then going in on his weaker foot and then going to the bottom corner. I was glad that he took on his right foot and he just went fuck this and just palmed it. That's exactly how you should be doing it in the box. None of that pussyfooting about and trying to take the piss out of the goalkeeper. I want to win the game. I don't want to you want to humiliate them later, but when you want to get a quick start in the game and you want to have control, don't fanny about. Get stuck in, and that's what we did, and we took a decisive goal. So I was happy with that. The only thing I was a little bit disappointed by as well is there's only one. I only have one problem actually when it comes to the goal, funnily enough, and it's actually the positioning leading up to when nobody's actually helping Rashford move across. He has to do everything on his own. So when the ball comes into him, he's got no one near him at all. He's got Pizzala and he's got Felipe Luis all around him. And it's purely in the sense that he's either going to have to be very clever here, or somebody's actually going to track a run and try and help him. He gets none of that, so he has to do it on his own. So that's what makes the goal better. But it's still disappointing that nobody actually helped him in that circumstance. Nobody helped in that way, but the goal was needed, and it was vital as well to get off a very early start, because we needed a fast start yesterday. We couldn't allow it to go 20-25 minutes at 0-0.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. What was your thoughts on the goal, Julio, Rashford's finish?
I think Reece pretty much hit the nail on the head with all of it. I think when players are in a really good run of form and they're really confident and stuff, they're always trying something different, something maybe we haven't seen them do before. I'm not saying it's that much of a big difference, obviously shooting low, shooting high, but we've not really seen Rashford do much of that. And it's funny because Bravo isn't a very tall goalkeeper. I know obviously he's got to have good reach and he's got to compensate in his reach and his jumping almost, but I think the goal must have caught him off guard just a little bit. But take nothing away from the finish. There was a really good finish from Rashford, and to be honest, Reece has hit the nail on the head with the timing of the goal as well. Almost a quick start, was much needed, because you'd have hated to have seen it go on and maybe not score, and then Betis get the first goal. And it might have almost, to the players' mindsets, almost be like a bigger mountain to climb. Now, I know Ollie said a few years back, mountains are there to be climbed and all that, but United needed to get that first goal quick to settle their nerves a little bit, because for them it was a big game. Personally, after what happened Sunday, they knew there needs to be a response. So, yeah.
I thought it was a very mature goal. It was a smart goal. It was a mature goal. The split second that he had to make his decision in a tightish area was something that Rashford is demonstrating more and more that he didn't demonstrate 18 months ago. In fact, he wouldn't have demonstrated that when he had his spectacular season in 2019-2020 when he scored 23 goals. He wouldn't have made that choice, that decision. And he would have gone low. And it would have been blocked. And we won't know if we would have picked up the second ball. Would they have achieved a turnover and popped down and scored? So I thought last night, and I did tweet, it was a very, very smart goal. People were saying Bravo was at fault. Absolutely no chance. Rashford had one area to put that football. He had no choice. It had one area. And the power and the precision is what beat Bravo. You could be Edison, Alisson, De Gea. I don't think De Gea would have stopped that. We all know De Gea is a good shot to stop it. It's the intricacy of his eyes to look at the actual position and to absolutely leather it like he did with control off the top of his boots was phenomenal. I thought it was a great goal. I really wanted to bring that up because, people look at goals all the time and they don't actually study the goal and just see how it opened up and how the play opened up. So I really, really want to look at that.
I don't see how. Sorry, I understood. I don't see how people think Claudio Bravo was at fault. When you look at Rashford at the time of the shot, Claudio Bravo was already on the ground because he had already saved an earlier shot. He's already on the ground. The man is 40. Like, Jesus Christ, he's not going to get up like a Diogo Costa. He's going spring up and fucking save them. Like, Jesus Christ.
No,
he's
but
not going to do that. He's an older player. It's going to take him a little bit of time to get up. So
football fans.
The players at fault for me is Felipe, which is good for us.
Yes.
Felipe's at fault because Pizzala takes the deflection off his knee, but Felipe is actually in front of Claudio Bravo the whole time. It's only after Rashford actually takes the bloody shot that you actually see that he's got no time to react, even though his hand's up in the air. He has to react to that split second. For people to blame Bravo, and I know he's an ex-City goalkeeper, but this guy literally won a treble at Barcelona like 8 years ago because he's that good a goalkeeper.
Which we're also missing the main point as well, is that Rashford fucking hit it hard. Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
He smashed that ball. My God. Like, I watched replays, because obviously, like, he scored right in front of us, so it's one of those you didn't really get a sense of it until I watched the replays back later on, and I was like, he's hit that. Do you know what I mean? He's angry and he's gone.
Exactly.
I'm having this.
I agree. He took it frustration. I would never blame Bravo in that circumstance.
No,
like, if I was even a Betis fan.
It happens. It happens, doesn't it? Football fans are very, very fickle. We all know this, but you've just got to, you got to look at it properly. Talking of fickle football fans and our fan base, you've got to love our fan base, haven't you? Weghorst. Now, I've been, as you well know, and Jamie knows this, I've been championing him for a while. I think he's been terrific for us. Phenomenal player. And unfortunately, he's just been ridiculed, castigated, all the wrong words you can use to talk about a spectacular team player. I'm going to, Jamie first, then Julio. Then good old Reece. I'm not going to butt in, but just wax lyrical about my man Vout.
Yeah, the guy's spot on, and you can tell the difference between people that watch football with their eyes and people that maybe watch a highlight show or whatever, or respond to stuff on Twitter. And it's I'm not saying that it's wrong to have different opinions, but people saying that he's useless and that he can't play for United, it's nonsense. Like, going forward, yes, we probably should be looking for a better, and a higher profile centre forward. If the like of Harry Kane becomes available for us, then yeah, of course we should be looking for somebody that's a bit of a bigger stature, more of a goal threat, etc., etc. But for where we are right now, Wout Weghorst is absolutely spot on. Everything that he does contributes to the team's ethic. It contributes to the team's success, and he's one of the most unselfish players I think I've seen. He was really unlucky not to score that first chance that he had that took the deflection and goes behind for a corner. But it was given as a goal kick, and obviously you see that it's very minute, like details and stuff like that. But yeah, it just bounces off the defender's foot. He had the one, fair enough, where he absolutely blasts it into row Z by accident. But then he finally got his goal, and it was one of those you could see how much it meant to him. And that's a man that's gone, finally, like, I've got my Old Trafford goal. Everything else that I do for the side, I've finally, put one in the back of the net. But I said this a few weeks ago that, and this will piss a certain section of our fan base off, and I'm fine with that. But Wout Weghorst right now is better than Cristiano Ronaldo was for us when he came back from Juventus. I would rather have somebody that does not contribute the numbers that Ronaldo did, but allows other players to perform to a higher level and allows the team to perform to a higher level, than somebody that can score 20 goals a season but offers us nothing else. Like, and especially with how Ronaldo's time, at the club, when he come, his time at the club was coming to an end, especially with what he was offering us there, which was we were playing with 10 men 90% of the time because he was offside half the time and he wasn't getting them back on side quick enough. He wasn't pressing, and the pressing structure from the front was never being able to, was never fully fledged or fleshed out because we didn't have a centre forward that was willing to trigger the press. Whereas with Weghorst, that's what we get. You watch. I don't think there's any coincidence that Rashford's been able to enjoy this vein of form that he's had when he's had Wout Weghorst occupying the centre halves, being a nuisance, dropping deep, picking the ball up, allowing Bruno to make those runs ahead of him. And instantly, by playing a centre forward like Weghorst, you've got 2 or 3 players that the level is elevated because we've got someone in there that can occupy the defences, and he pops up. Yes, he's not great at heading the ball. Who cares? You know what? Like, who cares? You got Bruno scoring headers like he did last night. Like, we don't need a 6'7" centre half that's going to score with his head. But it's one of those. It's people are always going to be reactionary. He's a really good stopgap centre forward loan that we brought in January, and people need to. He's not atrocious though. Do you know what I mean? He's not atrocious, is he? Like, and I know we say football is not
to react in the nicest way.
Football is not a stats game, but the stats don't lie when it comes to him. He's not putting the ball in the back of the net as much as a centre forward should do, and that's why I'm saying that come the summer, yes, we should be looking for a better centre forward. But I'm not having this thing of the minute going, oh, he's absolutely terrible. Send him back. Blah blah blah. Like, who's your other options? You've got Martial, who's available for 3 games a season, and Rashford, whose best position is off the left. So I think he's spot on. I think he's fantastic. He's a bit of a cult hero. He's like, when we brought Igalo in the other year, everyone loved Igalo. We always seem to have just that little bit of a cult hero that we bring in, and Weghorst is doing that job for me at the minute. You see him off the ball, he runs his socks off. And you know what? I bet he's everyone's best mate. Because you need a workhorse. You need somebody that's going to put in the ugly yards. But this thing about being a United player of what? We've not done anything for 10 years. We've been absolutely dross. Like, yeah, fair enough. He's not a United player of 15, 20 years ago. Like, but you're telling me Fergie wouldn't have enjoyed having a player like Weghorst around the squad? Somebody that can put in the ugly yards and that can do the hard running so that he's better players. You can imagine Weghorst with Kanchelskis off to his right or something like that. Like, Kanchelskis would love it, absolutely love it. But it's one of those people aren't ready for those conversations yet. But you know me, Stu. I like him.
I know. Julio, go for it.
Yeah, I think is there an argument to be made that because of his height, he's been almost misprofiled by people who just view him, think 6'6", oh, he must be this kind of striker, he must be this kind of player, because from what I see of him, he isn't that kind of target man sort of
he's never been a
stereotype everyone said he was. It's almost like because of his height, he plays up there, but what he does is almost like it's why Ten Hag plays him as the 10. It's almost because he's not bad with his feet. He does the hard yards. He runs around. For a guy of that stature to run around as much as he does, I think is impressive, full stop. But what he offers to the team is something different. And he's not everyone's cup of tea, obviously, but that entire front four scored last night. And that's not much to go by, but what he does, it almost like he helps everyone else around him. So it's like he does the hard yards so the likes of Bruno, Anthony, Rashford, or whoever's playing up there can get forward. And, obviously everyone was upset that he signed in January, but the fact of the matter is we weren't in a position where we could go out and sign the best striker. The best strikers don't usually go in January, and we have the Glazers as our owners. So him coming in on loan, and to be honest with you, even if we sign him in the summer permanently alongside a proper out-and-out number 9 who will score 20 goals for the season, I wouldn't be upset, because what Wakehorse also brings is attitude. I was I'm going a bit off on a tangent here, because I was having a debate with my cousin about a striker who would do more for the United team, like Wakehorse is doing. Like Jamie said, Wakehorse probably offers more to the team than Ronaldo did. I had the same kind of conversation when we were linked to Alvaro Morata. Now, I've got a soft spot for Morata, and that's just my thing. But you pair Morata with players around him who score goals, he might get 10 goals this season, but he'll get you 10 or so assists. Mm-hmm. So it's that Wakehorse is that kind of player, almost like you play him with people around him who score goals. He won't score as many goals, but he helps everyone, and he loves to be here. That article about the whole Liverpool thing, he loves being here. You saw how much the goal meant to him last night. So I wouldn't be so upset if he stayed at least for another year. Then we got in like a Vlahovic or a Kane or someone else. But I think there's a common misconception around him. And I think when you see what he offers, you can see why he is of use to Ten Hag and the team. So I think it's really unfair on Wakehorse they get so much criticism when, granted, he doesn't score all the goals that you maybe want him to, but he offers so much more elsewhere, and it's really good to have him here.
Yeah, so just before Reece comes in, and me and Reece have spoken about this before, so he probably knows what I'm going to say. Weghorst is unbelievable at moving players around. He moves centre-halves around, he moves full-backs around, and he creates a space for Rashford and for Anthony to do what they do. Okay, the reason... Yeah, you have to respect Weghorst as a person and a player on that pitch, because if you don't, as a centre half, and you switch off for a split second, you're done, because he's the one that's elbowing you out the way, or he's the one that's dropping a 5-yard pass off, and that's pulled maybe the centre half and the full back in to allow Rashford or Anthony to get their space. There's no, honestly, guys, you can say he's a 6'6" plank as much as you like. Just watch football, okay? Understand football, and you'll see where he is. I get Trevor's not a fan of him. Fair enough, but Trevor, trust me, Martial does not open up the play, open up the space, and unfortunately, I had to giggle because a certain channel, it will remain nameless, said that Martial should come straight in for Weghorst, and Martial's a better all-round player. It's not about whether or not you're a better all-round player.
I had to cough there, sorry.
I know, it's what you do, how you contribute for the team. That's what it is. Sorry, Reece, I just wanted to get that in, pal.
Naturally. Yeah, perfectly. One word to describe all, it's a layoff. Common example of what Weghorst actually does really well. He lays off. It's a short, intricate pass into a yard of space that does not stop play from diminishing. It allows play to continue. Vast majority of Rashford's goals since January have literally been layoffs, because it's that little pickup where they can just run, attack the ball and get into space. When you look at Weghorst, like, I watched this guy in the Bundesliga when he plays for Wolfsburg. He was like, for a guy of his height, he was actually the best pressing striker in the league, which is consistent also with Germany. Pressing is important in Germany. When you look at it, when he went to Turkey, fair amount of statistics there as well. He isn't the best striker we could have got in January. That is a fact. Like, even from a loan perspective, or even on a free transfer, because surprised the club didn't look at that either, because that can still happen. We didn't look at that option. We looked at Weghorst because it's a profile that fits the manager, and that's fine. Like, that's the manager's choice. Whether it's a question of his talent ID, which some fans have questioned his talent ID. Maybe he's actually just signing Dutch players because he's Dutch. It's familiar to him in his first year. I don't think so. I think he's trying to fit into the team that actually makes sense for him. Now, this is still his first season. He didn't have the money to get the striker that he wanted. He didn't have the money to get the goalkeeper. He's stuck with what he's got, but he's actually making ends meet with what he's signed already. Now, personally, I don't mind. Julio actually brought up Alvaro Morata. I don't mind Morata. Like, it's a fair shout. But I would only have Morata if it was a European Championship or World Cup season, because the man turns up in the last 6 months to go this season, because he has his purple patch where he scores like 15, 20 goals, and then he gets picked for the Spain squad. He has a banger of a tournament. He comes back to the club he's playing for, and then he's shit for another year and a half. Then he goes on another banging run, and then he hits another 10, 15 goals because it's another tournament. That's what Morata does well. But he does actually contribute play in that sense. So I do agree with that mention. In terms of Weghorst, though, in terms of an attacking sense, should he be our starting striker? No. Is he the right choice for the moment? Yes. Realistically, do we need to play him as a striker? That's the question you need to ask. And the answer is no. We don't. Because we can still... And the reason we don't have to play him is actually because of the position he's already been playing in recent weeks. He's a striker by trade, but he actually plays really well in that number 10 role. It's allowing the likes of Bruno Fernandes to be used in the role that Ten Hag actually wants him to do, and that is out wide, because his creative ability is actually more effective from a wide position. The only thing with that is it hampers us having natural wingers on the field who can play the ball. The way he played last night as a target man, as a big striker, it actually suited him to the sense where he had two old-fashioned centre-backs against him. And I say old-fashioned with respect to that, not in an offensive manner, because old-fashioned is where he fits in, because he will take them on. If it was two ball-playing centre-backs, I think Weghorst may have been a little bit out of control there. I think he would have been dispossessed too easily. Last night, Pizzala, Felipe, they don't play that type of football. They weren't going to do anything to him. So he was able to press them in that position. And it's a reflection of the fact, look at all the goals that he was generally involved in. It's because he was actually starting to play. You don't have to like the guy. That's not a problem. You don't have to want the guy in the team. But when you actually look at it, we are better in an attacking sense with him, either in the 10 role or in the 9 role, because he actually understands the contribution to the team. Martial's not a bad player, but Martial isn't going to give us that type of striker. If Martial offered that, we wouldn't have needed to sign Weghorst, but we had to also sign Weghorst as well, because Martial can't stay fit longer than Eric Bailly ever could in his career. Like, that says a lot, like how bad they are injury prone. Like, they are carbon copies of each other.
Aren't they just? Yeah. Aren't they just?
I'm all for the Weghorst signing, but in the summer, if we keep him, fine, but he shouldn't be our starter. We should look to get a more suited striker. But I'm not opposed to him coming in, because he's not actually done anything. He's not done anything remotely wrong when he's played. He hasn't done anything. The only thing that he could do better is score goals. I think even himself, he'll be disappointed he hasn't got enough goals. But his overall contribution has been valid for us. Like, the amount of goals we've scored since he's came in, like, it's extended that. So I'm not opposed to his signing at all.
And that's what football's about. It's all about contribution. It's not always about the end result.
Exactly.
Contribution. So, talking about contribution, by the way, there's plenty of you watching, plenty of you in the comments, which is great. We've already been speaking, or the comments have been chatting about De Gea. So let's have 5 minutes on De Gea. Questions are: does he deserve, or doesn't he deserve a new contract? He's obviously going to have reduced salary. We all know all of this. But are we better looking for a new goalkeeper in the summer? Are we better keeping De Gea? Julio, the lads know my opinion on this. If you've ever watched any of the shows I've been on, you'll know my opinion on this. So I'll start at this once again. But Jamie, we'll start with you, dudes. What's your thoughts on De Gea? Do we want him to sign a new contract? Do we feel he's worthy of a new contract, or is it time for him to move on?
One thing we're really bad at doing at United is we get emotionally attached and we make bad business decisions because of an emotional attachment we have to certain players. Cristiano Ronaldo realistically should not have been brought back, but at the time everyone gets swept up in the idea and the notion that he's going to City. And everyone's like, he can't do that. So we bring him back, this big homecoming, and he leaves the club worse than it was when he joined. Same as he did with Juventus. My fear is that at the minute, De Gea, he's just become our record clean sheet holder. So the emotional attachment is going to be ramped up to 100. How can you disrespect our highest ever clean sheet holder? He's a club legend. Yes, these things are true, but they're not mutually exclusive of whether he deserves to stay at the club or not. It is the right time for De Gea to leave Manchester United. He's done what he wants to do. Barring a Champions League, he's won everything there is to win with the club. He has come in and he's become our record clean sheet holder, so he's cemented his status in United folklore. So for me, the club now needs to go, thank you for all the years of service. We're not going to renew your contract. We're going to go out and we're going to buy Diogo Costa. We're going to buy Mike Maignan. We're going to buy somebody more suited to how Erik ten Hag wants us to play. And we've said this before multiple times. I don't want to disrespect one of the biggest legends that we still have knocking around the club. But you can't get emotionally attached in football. The biggest clubs in the world don't, and the biggest clubs in the world are ruthless. They do it in a nice way.
Unless you're Real Madrid.
Unless you're Real Madrid, of course, and Iker Casillas gets sent out the back door without so much as a farewell. But these massive clubs are cutthroat, and they understand that. Unfortunately, if something's in the best interest of the team and the club itself, that's what trumps everything else. So for me, I wouldn't even necessarily be sitting down with him to discuss a reduced contract and a rotation spot. I think he deserves a little bit more than that. He deserves to be a starter for someone, out in Spain, in France, somewhere else where the pressure's not going to be on him, the spotlight's not going to be on him constantly. But you can see, and someone made a comment earlier in the chat, that his body language is off at the minute. You can tell he's frustrated with himself. He probably knows that one of the biggest criticisms that everyone has of him at the minute is his distribution, and it's not even. We're not asking him to do world class things. I'm not expecting him to be Alisson and to effectively be a midfielder with the ball at his feet. But I want him to be able to pass the ball 10 yards and keep us out of trouble. We saw last night multiple times. He gets us into situations that we don't need to be in, and that any sort of half decent keeper with their feet would avoid. And the narrative of him being a good shot stopper is also starting to come to an end. Against Liverpool, he faced 8 shots. He saved one of them. So it's one of those. I'm starting to lose this idea in my head of he's a spectacular shot. Yes, he still has his camera-worthy saves. He's obviously got the save of the month, and I get that. But for me, it's looking how many chances oppositions get because he's poor at distributing the ball. You can see the hesitance as well from our back line to play the ball back to the keeper, which immediately puts us on the back foot. Luckily, we've got people like Lisandro Martinez who can play the ball. We saw last night he did it really well. He receives the ball in a dangerous area from De Gea, manages to turn it in, and he takes 2 Betis players out of the game and then distributes it himself. But we're already, and I've said this multiple times, we're already a man down when it comes to defensive transition. Because our keeper cannot start a counter-attack, or he can't distribute the ball or beat the press, we're already a man down in transition, and we're having to play the ball short to a centre-half and immediately invite pressure on. Makes it more difficult. One of the reasons why Liverpool tore us apart is because Alisson just clipped the ball to the fullbacks, and it was the easiest way for them to beat our press was because we'd go wide to Robertson or to Trent, and immediately the press was beaten, and they were in transition on the attack, and we're on the back foot. Then we don't do that at United because his pass success rate is poor. You look at all the diagrams that encompass all the stats, and the guy's in one of the lowest percentiles for Let's reading that.
I know.
He's got you there, mate. He's got you there, to be fair.
Trevor, he's funny, isn't he?
Yeah, but
he's got him stifled. That's the best part. He actually made Jamie stop. I will give that. That's a win.
It's one of those things that, you can't really compare Weghorst because everyone knows that he's not the long term. He's not even the long term striker. Do you know what I mean? In the summer, if we don't go for Goncalo Ramos or we don't go for Victor Osimhen or Harry Kane, then we're doing something wrong as a club. But the problem with De Gea is that everyone it has this idea that he's good enough to be our long term number one, and unfortunately the sad fact is he's not. You can tell Ten Hag wants a keeper that can start an attack. He wants a keeper that is comfortable with the ball at his feet. We need the keeper to be an extra man in transition, or if we do that thing where we'll overload the ball to the right hand side and then we'll play it around. Casemiro will play it to Dalot play back to Casemiro. We'll then look to Varane, and then we're stuck for an option. We'll go back to De Gea, but then immediately De Gea lumps it out, and it's so frustrating to see week in, week out. So for me, the club needs to find a way to honour him as our record clean sheet holder. I love the guy. He deserves to be honoured and he deserves to be celebrated. What we don't want him to do is to stay long enough that he becomes an even bigger problem and he tarnishes the reputation that he has. I want him to leave on a high with all the plaudits he deserves for saving us for multiple years. But we need to understand that football, unfortunately, is a fickle business and the game evolves past emotional attachment. So it's one of those that I think it's the right time in the summer to be going for Diogo Costa. David Raya, again, as a budget option, if we are strapped for cash, I wouldn't be against David Raya, but Diogo Costa has all the attributes there that you need to be a top, and he could be the best keeper in the world. And he'll be one of those keepers that in 5 years' time, if we don't get him now, everyone will be looking at, why didn't United go in for him at the time? So there's plenty of keepers out there on the market. There's been a few that were mentioned in there. But we'll see. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly I would look. Costa's Costa or Raya. A lot of people have mentioned you mentioned him as well. Mainan. I love Mainan, but you're never going to go get him at AC Milan. He's too big. The value is he's top 3 goalkeeper in world football for a reason. You can see the difference. He's so good. I saw Alex Merritt being mentioned from Napoli. No chance. They're not letting him go. They're about to win the league. He ain't leaving. Saw the long goalkeeper mentioned. Maybe. I would rather go Costa for me is my top choice, and then David Raya. I think they're the only smart ones. I know you mentioned budget choice, but I don't think Raya realistically is a budget choice because he's a Spanish. Actually, no, Unai Simon is, but he should be the Spanish number one. David Raya. He's so much better than out of the 3 goalkeepers. It's
more just you're going to be able to prize him away from Brentford for less than you're going to.
No, it's true though. He does have.
That's what I mean.
1 year left in his contract. Is it?
Yeah.
At the end of the season?
Sorry, I'll just clarify. I don't mean it's a budget option in terms of he's a step down. It's a cheaper option, I should say, because
I agree with you. No, I agree with you in that sense. So the Costa's going to cost like 60 odd million. So that is going to be Costa's fantastic. But there's one thing you mentioned actually. I want Costa or Raya. That's what I want. When you look at. There's one actual thing that I picked up on that you were talking about, and it was not about distribution, but it's more like starting position. Because I tweeted this last night. If De Gea wasn't to go, I don't expect his passing to improve. The one thing that I would expect him to improve on, I would actually be okay with this if his distribution stays completely shit. I would be all right with De Gea staying if he actually improves his starting position. He's 15 yards further forward. Because Costa's already near enough on the outside edge of his box. That's Costa literally looks at the Neuer and Ederson. He looks at starting position. He's ready to go. If De Gea was beyond that penalty spot, he's already high enough where he can actually come out and click. I know he does a bit of sweeping, but he doesn't do it enough. He doesn't command his area. I think he's quite timid. I think he's quite timid in that way where he won't command his area, but he's very confident at shouting and barking orders. That's fine. You can shout and bark orders all you want, but I still expect you to command and dominate your area. If he adds that, if he was able to do that, command his area, have an improved starting position, and then Varane, Shaw, whoever's playing in front of Reece Martinez, they can do the build-up for him, as long as he can just commands the area. That suits me already. But you can look at budget. David Raya is one of the best goalkeepers in the league, but he plays for a club like Brentford, but nobody it's Brentford, don't play for him. Andy Robertson played for a relegated Hull. He's one of the best left backs in football, unfortunately.
It's what happens with football, unfortunately. They won't look at players.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I I've had this argument for a long, long time that our fan base don't look at players that come from clubs like Brentford, that come like, oh, they're not cool enough, they're not hip enough for us. But look, I quite like Raya. I think he'll be a good addition to us.
I think he's a good keeper.
Yeah,
I think another thing as well, though, James was spot on about is the position of being a Man United goalkeeper is like, I think
it's the hardest on the planet.
I know. Gary Neville, I think, said that on the overlap as well. In terms of positions, like the hardest goalkeeping position in the world is Man United, because it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to be under scrutiny for anything. Like you can have a whirlwind game for 89 minutes, but then you can concede a goal in the 90th, and then that's all people are going to talk about. Yeah. So it is unfortunately nowhere else. Maybe the Real Madrid position, like that's always under constant talk. But United, on the other hand, like doesn't matter what you do, you'll always be scrutinized. Like Peter Schmeichel won the treble with us. He got royally scrutinised in his final season at the club every single week in the papers. Obviously, I was only 2 years old, but look at the papers. Schmeichel beaten easy by Michael Owen. Fowler beats Schmeichel. He cannot save a shot from Ian Wright. Anelka bullies him, like all this stuff, and like in Europe and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like how ineffective he was in the final when when Basler scored. It's like that says it all, really. Like he gets scrutinised for that. Like Van der Sar had his critics as well. Fabian Barthez, wild goalkeeper.
Goalkeepers do. Yeah, they do get
it happens, but I think
guys, we must move on, Reece. Sorry, dude.
No, I'm just saying I would be happy with that if he stays. I'd be happy as long as his starting position improved. But I think ideally we should move on.
We've got 10 minutes to go, and I've got a 7-a-side match to get to as well. So
absolutely, that's all I wanted to say though. Starting position should improve.
No, that's great, Julio. I want to talk to you about Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I love Wan-Bissaka. I'm a defender by heart. And I've always said that Wan-Bissaka should be our starting right back. Just chat to me about the impact you felt he had in last night's game and the impact he's had this season since he's come back into the side.
I mean, it seems like a long. I mean, it seems a while ago that we were just sitting there and thinking, yeah, Wan-Bissaka's gone. That's it. That's it. His United career is over. He's not playing. He's this is that. But it's, ever since the World Cup, it's like Dalot went to the World Cup but didn't come back.
Yeah,
he's either been away injured or he's come back and he's just not looked the player that he was before he left for the World Cup. And this was a player who managed to push João Cancelo, who everyone considered one of the best fullbacks in the league. He managed to push him out of the Portugal team. Take nothing away from that. I think Wan-Bissaka's worked on himself a little bit, but I think that he's got a little bit of he seems a bit more settled than last season. Last season it was almost like he was being targeted by all the players, like he was up against. He seemed a bit erratic, seemed like he couldn't make even a 5-yard pass. We always knew that Wan-Bissaka was great defensively. We saw it at the Etihad when Palace got that result in December 2018 against Leroy Sané, who was one of the best wingers in the league. But I think he's been given a vote of confidence, and it's like the more he's played, the more he's back to his best. Do you know what I mean? And it's looking really good. But I still have a hunch that maybe. Listen, I love Wan-Bissaka, and I'm glad that he's back to his best and he's playing really well. And I think that for a little bit, he's reclaimed the starting place because Dalot's not been all that since he's been back. But I still have a hunch that maybe this is just pleading a case that United will get more money for him in the summer. I think there's still a good chance that he could leave, but instead of the 10 million being quoted in January from other clubs, it will be more of a case of now they could get 25 million for him. So it's really good to see him back. And he come on last night and it just seemed to just change at the back a little bit. It was almost like because Betis weren't as productive, let's say, on that side as they were in the first half when Dalot was. So yeah, it's good to see him back to his best, and I really hope that he can have a say in what happens for the rest of the season.
Interesting points, and I agree with 90% of that. But for me, he stays, and he's my number one right back. I would really utilise him. I think his partnership with Anthony in particular is really flourishing. Anthony doesn't quite click with Dalot, but his partnership with Wan-Bissaka is flourishing. Wan-Bissaka's he's better moving forward now, but ultimately his main goal is to defend, and there's nobody better at one-on-ones right backs for me in the league. Right, guys, 1 to 11 time for Southampton. We haven't really spoken about the impending game that we've got on Sunday, but let's run around the. I've got a 7-a-side match to get to be honest, guys. Reece, are you still there? Have you disappeared?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm still here.
So we're going to run 1 to 11 then. So I'll go around each of you. Give me your 1 to 11s and a possible score.
I'll start then.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I was reading.
Comment
about
the file, so I'll let you go first, Jamie.
De Gea will be in goal as always, and I think it will be Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Martinez, Shaw at the back four, Casemiro, Fred, Bruno, and then it'll be Rashford, Weghorst, Anthony, the front three. We'll see Anthony Martial come on because he trained with the squad. He'll play for 15, 20 minutes. And James Ward-Prowse will score a free kick against us because it means that he goes level with Beckham. And of course, he'll do it against us.
And he keeps doing it against De Gea.
Yeah, literally. But it's like, you look at...
in my presence. You had to say that in my presence, you absolute bastard.
But it's like, you look at Vardy. Vardy did Van Nistelrooy's record against us. These records are there to be broken against us. So... I think we win. I think we win 3-1, and it'll be James Ward-Prowse in the sucker punch.
Yeah, Julio, what do you think?
Firstly, do we know if Sabitzer is going to be back for the Southampton game? I've not seen much, but he was missing yesterday.
I think he'll be benched anyway. I think Jamie's probably right.
Yeah. So. I think it'll be De Gea in there. I think we'll see Wan-Bissaka. I think we'll see Lindelof in defence, give Varane a rest. Martinez and Malacia. I'm going to go with Casemiro and Fred because I don't want to put McTominay in there.
No one does.
Next to Fred. And I would have put Sabitzer for Casemiro, but yeah, at the moment, it looks like Casemiro, but I'd love to rest Casemiro personally.
Go with Sabitzer,
I think we'll see Sancho and Rashford on the wings and with Bruno in the 10 or right wing, whatever. And then it's going to be Weghorst up front because, Martial's made of glass. I think I read somewhere that Weghorst in a quarter of a season has played the same amount of games as Martial has for us in the last year, 2 years,
probably
like that. So it's
and a score prediction.
I'm going to say 3-1 as well. I think what Jamie said, I think is pretty much going to happen from Southampton scoring a certain way to us maybe getting the job done.
Yeah. Okay. Reece.
De Gea, Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Martinez, Malacia, Fred, Casemiro, Sancho, Fernandes, Rashford, Weghorst, 2-1.
2-1. And your first goal scorer?
Own goal.
Own goal. Okay. Just before we go, Jarvis has actually made a great point because I was asked in last night's show actually what I thought about Pellistri. What did I think about Pellistri's contribution to the game? And I actually said, and somebody asked me a question about where I saw Pellistri's best position. And I think for us, he would be a better 10 than a wide player. But what I like about, and I want to ask you all about this, what I like about Pellistri is his attitude. I think he's mentally better than Garnacho, mentally better, superior than Garnacho. I'm not saying he's a better ball player than Garnacho, but he's mentally better. His use of the ball is 2 to 3 inches away from his toe, which is where it should be at all times. He's got a great low centre of gravity, but he's got absolute balls like Garnacho has. But he does something with it. He has an end result. And that's why I think mentally he's a stronger player than Garnacho. But looking at him last night, and Jarvis is right, I don't think we've seen enough of the kid, actually. I think he deserves more of a chance. I actually think for us, he would be a dynamic 10. He would be dynamite for us in that position. We don't need height. A number 10 doesn't need height. He needs to be able to read the game, penetrate when possible, get back when possible, but almost as well as Casemiro dictates our attacking flow, in our half and our final third, he needs to, or Palestri could really, I think, be pivotal to our attacking speed in the final third of the pitch. So for me, I think Jarvis is right. He had a phenomenal 3, 4, 5 minutes last night. He was terrific. So just briefly, guys, give me your thoughts on Palestri.
I love the guy. I think he's quality. I think in terms of mentality, I do agree. I think Garnacho's a fantastic talent, but I do agree. Like, you see the way that Palestri comes onto a field compared to Garnacho. The one thing Garnacho's looking for is space to get behind. Palestri immediately goes looking for the ball. I think that's a major difference. Is like one of them wants to be effective in behind so they can attack a fullback. The other wants to draw the fullback onto them by actually dictating control of the play. Ideally, when you look at it, sort of agree with you in a way. Like, as a 10, I sort of see it, but I think the more favourite in that position is probably going to be Sancho and maybe Palestri out wide. Sancho as a 10 is what I would prefer. I would rather have Palestri, Sancho. I'd have that as my 3.
I agree with that to an extent. And I do kind of like Sancho in the 10, but I think Palestri's got more about him, if I'm being honest.
There is something there that's different. There is something there. I just think the one thing I like, the one thing I think is the key difference for me is that burst of pace difference. Like Palestri out wide compared to Sancho. Sancho isn't renowned for being quick. He's very agile in that sense. He turns quickly. He's far more effective in that position. I would rather have him in that through that middle position where he doesn't have to be overly quick, but he is able to turn defenders inside out or draw them on. Palestri in the wide positions has got that burst of pace to attack a fullback and cross in. You got Garnacho to attack spaces in that position as well on the left hand side. So that's what I would prefer as a rotational 3 behind the striker. I would have Palestri, Sancho, Garnacho in that way. But maturity wise, I think Palestri also as well. You can see the difference being only a year or two older than Garnacho. Like, there is more maturity there as a professional, but they're both fantastic talents anyway. And there's people that want him to go. And I'm like, no. I think Amad Diallo's fantastic as well. He's doing fantastic at Sunderland, and he's another player who'll come back into the fold. But all in all, in terms of who I would actually keep, I would rather keep Palestri. I think he actually has more to him. I think, and I'm not knocking off Amad in that way, but Amad's got something there for next season. But I think when you look at it, Palestri out of the 3 is actually the better player. Garnacho, I think, has got the higher ceiling. Diallo's the one that I think is the one that's hard to predict. He's unpredictable. And that's what makes him a useful talent as well, but maybe in that wide position as well. So, but no, 100%, like Garnacho and Palestri are the future in those 2 positions. But Palestri, like, even as a 10, I don't mind it. But I would rather have Sancho there personally. I think he's more dynamic in that sense.
Okay, Julio, what's your thoughts, dude?
The kid only cost us 10 million, which I think is quite good. I can't lie to you. Listen, it's clear that he's a little bit more, you could say, mature than Garnacho because he's been around the block a little bit. He's played in Uruguay. He came here quite young. He's been out on loan a couple of times. Now he's back. I agree what you say about the 10. But I can see a scenario where you have some games where in the rotation games, maybe you'll have Garnacho on the left, Palestri on the right, and Amad in the middle as rotation options. And between Amad and Palestri, they might swap out every now and then. They've got that. They both look like 10s who could accommodate the wing in some cases. And the only thing I want to say is, because Reece has pretty much hit the nail on the head with it all. Last season, it looked like we couldn't get any wingers. Now suddenly we sign Anthony and players are coming back from loan and Garnacho's come through and suddenly we're stacked for the next 10 years almost. I mean, I think Palestri's ahead of Elanga now in the pecking order, but I think Elanga's got 1.5 feet out the door. So unfortunately, I think he can accommodate both positions. And with Amad coming back next season, it's almost like we're set in the 10s and the wings for a good few years at least.
I agree completely. I agree. And the mention of Alanga as well. I like Alanga, but I agree. It's time for him to move on. I don't actually think he's got any future at the club at all. He did maybe a year and a half ago, but he got overplayed and he got found out very quickly, and that's really cost him because he was good to watch in the academy. He was good to watch, electric for either on the left-hand side or through the middle. I have never said that in my life. You behave yourself. That is the biggest load of bullshit I've seen since Pep Guardiola being called the best manager of all time. Second bit of bullshit.
Definitely not.
Like Alanga for me, like he's an exciting player and he's got one key attribute of football that's important, that's pace. But he got found out too quickly. He doesn't have a ceiling at all. It is definitely time to move him on. So if we get even like 10 million for Alanga in the summer, I'd take it. I don't think he's going to be worth more than that.
No, I think you're probably right. 10 million. Jamie, you get the final word on Pellistri, our main man at the minute, because, like I said, I thought he was phenomenal.
Yeah, he was, and I'm going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works here because I'm going to slightly disagree with you, Stu. But I think Pellistri is the only traditional winger we have at the club.
Yes.
In terms of he's obviously he plays on the side that his dominant foot's on. He wants to get to the touchline. Go past the player. Everyone else is looking to drive into the channel, whereas Pellistri, you saw last night, he created that goal by going round, beating a player for pace. So there is something clearly there, and I think there's something that Ten Hag sees that he likes. Otherwise, he would have gone out because he wasn't short of suitors in January, and I think, I think that Ten Hag is sitting there going, "Oh, I can work with this kid here." Him and Garnacho, I agree. It's different profiles on the different wings. It provides us with that. So it's almost like a bit of a lopsided tactic that we can go. You've got one that wants to cut inside and drive in. You've got somebody else that's really comfortable on the touchline. Can have someone underlap or overlap, and it does just create us a few different scenarios. So yeah, I think he's got a big future here. I think he's wicked, and I think, like you say, I think Alanga's probably finished at the club now. It's sad whenever a player leaves, but it's why he'll end up going to Dortmund. He'll end up going to somewhere in Germany, and he'll do all right. And then I personally think Ahmad will leave in the summer. I think that Ten Hag won't offer him the first team football that he wants, and I think it'll be mutually beneficial for everyone. Which again will be sad because there's clearly bags of potential there. But yeah, Pellistri, man, when he came on, Weghorst's goal was created by Pellistri. Do you know what I mean? Like, granted, Weghorst's positioning was good to make sure he was there for the rebound and stuff, but when the way he goes round him, I was just like, nah, he's not keeping this in. Surely not. And then all of a sudden, I was just like, kid's electric. He's got good pace, and he's one of those. He's really deceivingly quick. Over a short period of time, and with the ball at his foot, over a short distance, you can put yards between him and somebody else. So I'm excited to see his development. Do you know what I mean?
I'd like to see him Sunday
as well.
I'd like to see him Sunday. Come on and maybe do something Sunday. But you're absolutely right. He did set up the clinical Weghorst.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Best centre forward in the league.
It was a clinical finish, Trevor. Clinical. It may have come off his shin or rolled down his knee. As long as they go across that line, pal, it all counts. Guys, I'm going to be slightly late. My gaffer's going to be phoning me any minute. Where are you? So I must go. Big thank you to Jamie. Big thank you to Julio. Thank you very much, mate. Really enjoyed listening to you today, pal. And thank you as always to Reece. I'm echoing for some reason. Thank you to all for watching and also your comments. So we will see you soon.